The rain wasn't falling. It was attacking Philadelphia, a cold December onslaught that turned streets into rivers and windshield wipers into frantic metronomes of futility. At 50 years old, Leo Mercer was a man navigating the aftermath of his own personal shipwreck, and his lifeboat was a 2008 Honda Civic with a persistent rattle and a roof that wept condensation. The Luigi's Pizza sign bolted to its top was a blinking neon badge of humiliation. He clutched the steering wheel, his knuckles white, the cheap, waterlogged fabric of his Luigi's jacket clinging to his skin like a shroud. The heater wheezed a pathetic stream of lukewarm air, doing little to fight the chill that had settled deep in his bones. This delivery to the opulent, tree-lined sanctuary of Rittenhouse Square was his last for the night. All he wanted was his $12 tip and to retreat to his cramped, mildewed studio apartment and to forget for a few blessed hours that he had once been someone. The address, 1247 Rittenhouse Square, was a brownstone that spoke of old money and quiet power. Leo grabbed the insulated bag containing one large pepperoni with extra cheese, took a deep breath, and plunged back into the deluge. He sprinted up the slick granite steps, water already seeping through his worn-out sneakers. He rang the bell, shifting his weight from foot to foot, a shiver racking his frame. The heavy oak door swung inward, and what happened next froze him more effectively than the December rain. The man who opened the door was ancient, maybe late 70s, with a shock of white hair and a face mapped with the lines of a long life. His name, Leo would soon learn, was Silas Croft. But in that first surreal moment, Silas didn't speak. His eyes, a piercing blue despite his age, locked onto Leo's face. They widened in disbelief, then in something akin to terror. A gasp escaped his lips, a raw, wounded sound lost in the drumming rain. Then his legs buckled. He didn't stumble, he dropped, his knees hitting the polished hardwood floor of the foyer with a sickening thud. "Sir," he said, his voice tight with alarm, "are you okay? Should I call an ambulance?" Silas Croft ignored him. He remained on his knees, his body trembling, his gaze fixed on Leo's face as if he were staring at an apparition. His hand, liver-spotted and frail-looking, rose, reaching out toward Leo's cheek, but stopping short, as if the vision would dissolve. "Dear God," the old man whispered, his voice cracking with an emotion so profound it was painful to hear. "It can't be. Those eyes, that jaw, you're Daniel Prescott's son. You have to be." Leo took an involuntary step back, confusion and concern warring within him. The name meant nothing. It was a ghost from a past he'd never known. "Sir, my name is Leo Mercer. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. Are you sure you're all right? Let me help you up." "Daniel Prescott was your father," Silas insisted, his voice gaining a desperate strength. "I know it. I'd know that face anywhere. He was my best friend." His eyes, now filled with tears that traced the lines on his face, never left Leo's. "I've been searching for you for 30 years, Lionel." The use of his given name, a name he never used, felt like a physical blow. His heart, which had been merely tired, began to hammer against his ribs. How do you know my name? Nobody called me that, not since I was a kid." "Because I was there," Silas cried, his voice breaking. "I was his business partner. We started a company together back in 1982. Your father owned 50%. With a grunt of effort, Silas struggled to his feet, grabbing Leo's arm with a surprising iron grip. "Please," he implored, his desperation mingling with a wild, inexplicable joy. "You have to come inside. What I'm about to show you, it will change everything, your entire life." Every rational instinct screamed at Leo to leave. He had 3 more pizzas getting cold in his car. He had a schedule to keep. This old man was clearly unwell, lost in some senile fantasy. But something in Silas's eyes, a profound, decades-old grief mixed with a blazing newfound hope, held him captive. It was a pull stronger than reason, a hook cast into the deep, still waters of his own forgotten history. Mutely, Leo nodded, stepping across the threshold into the warmth of the brownstone. He let the heavy door swing shut, muffling the sound of the rain, closing off the world he knew and opening a door to one he could never have imagined. The living room was a time capsule, a museum dedicated to a life Leo had no memory of. The walls were a mosaic of framed photographs and yellow documents. There were images of two young men, arms slung around each other's shoulders, standing in front of half-built skyscrapers, posing with shovels at groundbreakings, smiling from the cab of a bulldozer. They were both handsome, full of the swagger of youth. And one of them was a mirror image of Leo himself. The same dark, unruly hair, the same strong, determined jaw, the same slight, defiant crook in the nose. It was like looking at a ghost, a version of himself from a past life. Silas saw the recognition in Leo's eyes. He moved to one particular photograph, taking it from the wall with reverent, shaking hands. It showed the two young men, clad in hard hats and work boots, standing in a vast, empty field of mud and reeds. They were grinning, holding up a rolled-up document between them. "This is your father, Daniel, and me. The day we signed the incorporation papers for Croft and Prescott Holdings, that worthless patch of swampland behind us, that was our dream." Leo's throat felt like sandpaper. "My mother? She never mentioned any of this. Not a word." "Because we thought we'd failed," Silas explained, his shoulders slumping slightly at the memory. "The city denied our development permits. 6 times we applied, 6 times they rejected us. The Environmental Board, the Zoning Commission, they said it was protected wetlands, that we were fools. Your father, he was devastated. He'd invested his entire savings account, taken out a second mortgage on your family's home. He died 2 months later in that accident on I-95, believing he had lost everything, that he'd failed you and your mother before you were even born." Leo remembered the vague story his mother had told him, a car accident, a tragic end. She had never spoken of his father's dreams, only of his love. She had protected him from the failure, burying it with the man himself. "I went to the funeral," Silas continued, his eyes distant. "Your mother, Eleanor, was 8 months pregnant with you. The grief, it had hollowed her out. When I tried to talk to her about the company, about Daniel's share, she screamed at me. She said she never wanted to hear another word about Daniel's failed dreams. She told me to get out of her life and stay out. A few weeks after you were born, she moved, disappeared. I hired private investigators, but it was as if you'd both vanished into thin air." He led Leo to an antique mahogany desk, its surface littered with ledgers and file folders. He pulled one out, its spine cracked with age. He opened the folder, revealing stacks of bank statements and legal documents. But 6 months after Daniel died, a miracle happened. The state announced the Delaware Valley Innovation Zone. Suddenly, that worthless swampland was the most desirable real estate in 3 states. The permits we'd been denied for years were approved overnight. And I couldn't find you to tell you. He opened the folder and flipped to the last page of the bank statement and pointed a trembling finger at the bottom line. Leo's vision blurred. He'd blinked, sure he was misreading the number. He counted the digits again, his brain struggling to process the figure. $823,477,191.87. "That's not possible," he breathed, his voice barely a whisper. He felt the strength leave his legs, a sudden overwhelming dizziness washing over him. "It's very possible," Silas said, a grim smile touching his lips. "Google built their East Coast data center on Lot 9. Apple's regional headquarters is on Lot 18. 3 major research hospitals, 53 office buildings, 3 high-end shopping centers, all of them pay rent to Croft and Prescott Holdings. Half of that," he tapped the number on the page, "belongs to you." The pizza bag slipped from Leo's numb fingers, hitting the exquisite Persian rug with a soft thud, the cardboard box inside sliding partway out. He didn't care. He collapsed into a nearby wingback chair, his mind reeling. $823 million. The number wasn't just a number. It was a key that unlocked a torrent of suppressed memories and fresh, searing pain. It transported him back 6 months to the life that had been systematically stolen from him. 6 months ago, Leo Mercer had it all. For 23 years, he had poured his soul into the Titan Global, a massive logistics and supply chain conglomerate. He had started in the warehouse, a fresh-faced kid with a business degree and a relentless work ethic. And he had climbed every rung of the corporate ladder. His corner office on the 30th floor of the Titan Tower had a breathtaking view of the Philadelphia skyline. He managed a team of 45 people, had been named Senior Vice President of Logistics 3 years running, and commanded the respect of his peers and the fear of his competitors. His divorce from Isabella, 8 years final, had been a painful but necessary amputation. Once the constant tension and her insatiable appetite for drama had been removed from their lives, his children had truly flourished. Sophia, at 22, was in her final year of the Pennsylvania's University's prestigious nursing program, ace in her classes and volunteering at a free clinic in her spare time. Michael, 31, had just been made the youngest partner in the 60-year history of his law firm, Sterling and Locke. They had Sunday dinners together twice a month at Leo's comfortable home in the leafy suburb of Chestnut Hill. It was his sanctuary.
"Dad, you're still young," Sophia would say, passing him a bowl of roasted potatoes. "You should get back out there. Mom's been on like 500 dates. "I'm perfectly content, sweetheart," he'd always reply, smiling. "My life is my work, and you too. After your mother, I think I've had enough excitement for one lifetime." Michael would chuckle. "Exciting is one word for it. Remember when she tried to get us to invest in that revolutionary timeshare in Boca Raton? The one that was actually a condemned building?" They could laugh about it now, about Isabella's perpetual quest for more money, more status, more attention. She had left Leo for a flamboyant restaurateur who had declared bankruptcy within 18 months. The last Leo had heard, she was working as a sales associate at a high-end boutique, still chasing a lifestyle she could never quite afford. Then came the Titan Global Annual Gala in June. It was always a spectacle of excess, held at the Franklin Institute with ice sculptures, celebrity chefs, and an orchestra. Leo was enjoying a rare moment of relaxation, laughing with his team when a familiar voice boomed across the crowd. "Leo, there you are!" Grayson Thorne, the founder and CEO of Titan Global, was weaving through the crowd, a woman in a stunning backless crimson gown on his arm. Leo felt a prickle of unease. Thorne was a notoriously difficult man, a shark in a Brioni suit, but he had always respected Leo's results. "Leo, I've been meaning to properly introduce you to my fiancée. This is Isabella." The woman turned and the world slowed to a crawl. It was her, his ex-wife. Her eyes, the same predatory green he remembered, met his, and a slow, vicious smile spread across her expertly painted lips. "Hello, Leo," she said, her voice a silken purr. "It's been too long." "Isabella has been telling me all about your history together," Thorne said, his arm snaking possessively around her waist. His gaze was challenging, as if he enjoyed the discomfort he was causing. "Small world, isn't it? Your ex-wife, soon to be the new Mrs. Thorne." Leo's team had fallen silent. Glasses were studied with intense interest. He could feel the heat rising up his neck. He forced his lips into a professional smile. "Congratulations to you both. I hope you'll be very happy." "Oh, we will be," Isabella interjected, her eyes never leaving Leo's. "We should all have dinner sometime, like adults. I'd love to catch up, hear how the kids are doing." The way she said "the kids," as if she hadn't missed a dozen birthdays and graduations, as if she hadn't chosen her new life over them, made his jaw clench so hard he thought a tooth might crack. "They're doing wonderfully," he said, his voice tight. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I see someone I need to speak with." He turned and walked away, the sound of Isabella's light, mocking laughter following him. His assistant, Brenda, found him 10 minutes later on the balcony, gripping the railing and staring out at the city lights. "You okay, boss?" she asked quietly. That looked, intense. "It's fine, Brenda. Ancient history." "If you say so," she replied, her tone skeptical. But just be careful. That woman looked at you like you were a rabbit, and she just remembered how much she loves stew. Brenda's warning proved prophetic. In the weeks that followed, Isabella became a constant, ghostly presence at Titan Tower. She would arrive to have lunch with Thorne, always making a detour past Leo's department. She began sitting in on high-level strategy meetings, whispering in his ear, her eyes constantly flicking toward Leo with a cold, calculating gleam. "Dad, what's wrong?" Michael asked during one of their Sunday dinners. "You look like you haven't slept in a week." "It's just work stuff. Thorne's, fiancée is Isabella." "Mom? Mom is marrying your boss?" "It's fine. I just need to keep my head down and stay professional." "No, Dad," Michael said, his lawyerly instincts kicking in. "This is a major conflict of interest. You need to start documenting everything. Every interaction, every meeting she attends. This feels like a prelude to trouble." His late mother, Rose, would have seen it coming from a mile away. "Leo, you have your father's heart," she used to tell him. "He saw the good in everyone even when it wasn't there to be found. The world isn't always fair, but the truth has a way of finding daylight." She had raised him alone after his father's death, working double shifts as a nurse, her hands raw and chapped, her spirit unbroken. She had died 3 years ago, leaving him a small box of his father's belongings, a class ring, a few photographs, a pocket watch that didn't work, and her quiet, stubborn wisdom. He should have listened to Michael. He should have seen the trap being laid, but he believed in the system. He believed that 23 years of impeccable service, of loyalty and results would be his armor. He was tragically, catastrophically wrong. The destruction of his life was executed with surgical precision over 72 hours. It began at 7:18 on a Monday morning. His phone buzzed on his nightstand. It was Helen Vance, the head of human resources. "Leo, we need you to come to the HR suite immediately." Her tone was frigid, formal. The walk from his office to HR felt like the Green Mile. Helen sat behind her desk, her face a mask of neutral professionalism. 2 uniformed security guards flanked the door. "There's been a serious allegation, Leo," she began, not meeting his eyes. She slid a stack of papers across the desk. "Substantial inventory has gone missing from the Consolidated Distribution Center. The digital access logs show your executive override code was used to authorize each transfer." His blood ran cold. "That's impossible, Helen. I haven't set foot in the CDC in over 4 months. My team handles the regional hubs." "The records say otherwise," she said flatly. "There are 34 separate transactions over the past 90 days, all with your digital signature, all logged during off hours." He scanned the documents. It was all there. His code, his digital ID, timestamps showing logins at 2 a.m., 3:30 a.m. "This is fabricated. Check the cameras. They'll prove I wasn't there." The cameras in the relevant sectors experienced a systemic malfunction during those specific periods. The backup server also failed. Helen's voice was devoid of emotion. "Mr. Thorne wants this handled discreetly. Resign now, sign this non-disclosure agreement, and we will not pursue criminal charges." "Criminal charges?" Leo shot to his feet. "For something I didn't do? I want to call my lawyer." "That is your prerogative," Helen said, her gaze finally lifting to his. It was cold and pitiless. "But Mr. Thorne was hoping to avoid causing any collateral damage. Your son Michael just made partner at Sterling & Locke, didn't he? It would be a shame if the firm's newest partner was associated with a scandal of this magnitude." The threat was as clear as it was vicious. They would destroy his children to get to him. "I'm not resigning," Leo said, his voice shaking with rage. "Then you're suspended, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building." The walk of shame was a nightmare. Past the desks of his team, past Brenda, whose face was streaked with tears, past colleagues he'd known for decades who looked away, unable to meet his eye. The security guards flanked him all the way to his car, a silent, humiliating procession. Tuesday brought the police. A half-dozen officers with a search warrant tore through his home in Chestnut Hill, a home filled with memories of his children growing up. They confiscated his computers, his files, his personal financial records. He watched from his neighbor's window as they led him away in handcuffs, the entire street watching the spectacle. "Dad, what's going on?" Sophia sobbed over the phone from her dorm room. "The police were here asking questions." "It's a misunderstanding, sweetheart. I'll get it sorted. Don't worry." But by Wednesday, it was clear this was a coordinated annihilation. An internal memo from Titan Global detailing the ongoing investigation into serious financial misconduct had been leaked to every major logistics firm on the East Coast. His phone stopped ringing. His LinkedIn profile became a graveyard of severed connections. 23 years of building a reputation were erased in 48 hours. The text from Isabella came Wednesday night, just as he was posting bail. "Enjoy being nobody, Leo. You always were too small for the world I deserve. Grayson sends his regards." He called Michael. "I need a lawyer, the best, someone who isn't afraid of Grayson Thorne." "I'll do it, Dad. I'll represent you." "No, Michael, you just made partner. I won't let them drag you down with me. Your career is just starting." The lawyer he hired at $550 an hour was a pit bull. But Grayson Thorne's legal team was a pack of wolves. They buried them in motions, in discovery requests, in delays. The legal bills were a vortex, sucking down his savings, his retirement fund, his children's college funds. Within 2 months, he was facing foreclosure. "Leo," his lawyer said during a grim meeting, "I have to be blunt. Thorne has done this before. I've found 2 other executives who crossed him and faced near-identical accusations. They lost everything. We're David fighting Goliath, and Goliath owns the quarry, the slingshot factory, and the rights to the story." He sold everything. The house in Chestnut Hill, his car, his father's pocket watch. Michael tried to slip him money, but he refused. Sophia offered to drop out of Penn to work full-time to help him fight. The thought of her sacrificing her future for Thorne's lies was a pain worse than any humiliation. Luigi's Pizza was his final desperate refuge. The owner, a gruff, kind-hearted Italian immigrant named Luigi Moretti, had looked at his application, looked at him, and grunted, "You show up on time, you work hard, you get paid. I don't care about nothing else." Delivering pizzas at 50 in the same neighborhoods where he had once been a respected executive was a daily exercise in soul-crushing humility. His first delivery was to the wife of a junior manager from Titan. The second was to a neighbor from his old street. The third was to one of Isabella's gossipy friends who had cackled and tipped him a single condescending dollar. "Leo, hey man, is that you?" He was stopped at a red light, the Luigi sign blinking pathetically on his roof. It was Ben, from his old accounting department, pulling up beside him in a new BMW. "Ben, hey?" "Jesus, I heard what Thorne did to you. Everyone knows it's bullshit, Leo, but nobody will say anything. The guy owns half the city. He'd crush us too." 3 months into his new life, the fight had gone out of him. He delivered pizzas, paid his rent, and tried to become invisible. The man who had managed $1 billion supply chain now worried about the price of a gallon of milk. He was nobody, just as Isabella had said. That night, driving through the relentless rain to Silas Croft's brownstone, he had accepted his fate. He had no idea that the universe, in the form of a grief-stricken old man, was about to hand him not just a fortune, but a weapon. Back in the warm, book-lined study, Leo stared at the bank statement, the number $823 million burning itself into his retinas. The initial shock was receding, replaced with a cold, clarifying fury. "There's something else, Lionel," Silas said, his voice dropping, becoming conspiratorial. He pulled a specific thick lease agreement from the folder. "Your ex-wife's new husband, Grayson Thorne. His corporate headquarters, the Titan Tower, it sits on our land, Lot 22. He's been our tenant for 12 years. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Grayson Thorne rents from us? The sheer poetic injustice of it was breathtaking. The man who had eviscerated him, who had taken his career, his home, his dignity, was operating his empire from land that Leo now owned. And, Silas continued, a sharp, lawyerly glint in his eye, there is a clause I insisted on when we drafted the original leases. Your father believed in doing business with integrity. Any tenant who was found to have engaged in fraudulent, unethical, or criminal business practices can have their lease terminated with 30 days of notice. Leo thought of Sophia, crying on the phone. He thought of Michael offering his hard-earned money. He thought of the pity in his former colleague's eyes, the feel of handcuffs on his wrists, the text message from Isabella, "Enjoy being nobody." He stood up slowly. The dizziness was gone, replaced with a steady iron resolve. He looked at Silas Croft, this guardian of his father's legacy. "Mr. Croft," Leo said, his voice calm and steady, the voice of the executive he used to be. "I think it's time Grayson Thorn met his new landlord." Silas's smile was thin and fierce. "I've already taken the liberty of contacting my attorneys, the best in the city, Eleanor Shaw from Shaw and Cobalt. She's expecting your call tomorrow morning." For the first time in 6 months, Leo Mercer felt something stir in his chest, something he had forgotten existed. It wasn't just hope, it was the cold, clean promise of justice. The following week was a whirlwind of quiet, efficient power. Eleanor Shaw was a formidable woman in her 60s with a razor-sharp mind and a reputation for eviscerating opponents in court. Her team moved with a speed and precision that made Titan Global's lawyers look like amateurs. They verified the inheritance, established Leo's controlling interest in Croft and Prescott Holdings, and launched a deep-dive investigation into Grayson Thorn's business practices. "Mr. Mercer," Eleanor said, sitting across from him in her corner office that overlooked the very Titan tower they were about to besiege. "You don't just own the land under his feet. You own the leverage to dismantle his entire operation. That building is custom built for his logistics software and server farms. Relocating would cost him upwards of $75 million and take over a year. He's trapped." "How soon can we move?" Leo asked, his gaze fixed on the gleaming tower. "We already have," she replied with a small, satisfied smile. "I've filed the paperwork establishing your ownership and sent a formal notice to Thorn's legal department informing them that you will be personally reviewing all lease renewals effective immediately." His phones, I am told, are melting. As if on cue, Leo's new private phone buzzed. Isabella. He let it go to voicemail. The next morning, Leo sat in his Civic, now parked in a reserved spot in the underground garage of a building owned by Croft and Prescott. He wore the one good suit he kept from his old life, freshly dry-cleaned. In his hands was a simple manila folder. Inside was not a weapon of steel, but one of paper and law. The lease agreement for Lot 22. His phone rang again. He answered.
"Leo?" Isabella's voice was shrill, stripped of its usual purr. "What the hell is going on? Grayson is having a meltdown. His lawyers are screaming about some change in ownership of this building. You're involved in this, aren't you? What have you done?" "Actually, Isabella, I have," he said, watching Grayson Thorn's black Maybach pull into its designated spot a few yards away. "Tell Grayson his new landlord would like to discuss his recent business practices. The meeting is in 15 minutes. Conference room A on the 40th floor." "What are you talking about? Have you completely lost your mind?" "Oh, and Isabella," he added, his voice dropping to an icy calm, "that boring man you left? He owns the ground your future ex-husband's empire is built on. The penthouse he bought you last month, it's in a building on my land. It's all mine." The silence on the other end was profound, broken only by a sharp, indrawn breath. Then a shriek. "That's impossible! You deliver pizzas!" "Not anymore. See you upstairs." He ended the call and stepped out of the car. He walked through the marble lobby, no longer a delivery boy, but a king returning to his castle. The receptionist looked up, her mouth opening in confusion, until Eleanor Shaw and her team of 6 lawyers fell into step behind him, their footsteps echoing in unison. "We're here for the meeting with Mr. Thorn, the penthouse conference room." The elevator ride was silent, the numbers climbing. When the doors slid open on the penthouse level, they walked into a scene of barely controlled chaos. Grayson Thorn was there, flanked by a small army of 12 attorneys.
Isabella stood beside him, her face a mask of panic and fury, her composure shattered. "Hello, Grayson," Leo said, walking calmly to the head of the immense glass conference table and taking the seat. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with your landlord." Thorne's face cycled through emotions, confusion, contempt, and finally, as Eleanor slid the ownership documents across the table, a dawning, gut-wrenching terror. "This is a joke," he snarled, but his fear in his eyes betrayed him. "A pathetic, desperate stunt." "No joke, Mr. Thorne," Eleanor said coolly. "Mr. Mercer is the majority owner and controlling interest of Croft and Prescott Holdings. Your lease for these premises expires in 30 days. He will be deciding on its renewal." "You can't do this," he snarled. "We have a contract, which," Leo interjected, his voice calm but firm, "contains a very comprehensive morality clause." He turned to Eleanor. "Eleanor, would you be so kind as to share the findings of our investigation?" Eleanor opened her laptop. "We have sworn affidavits from 19 former Titan Global employees. All describe a pattern of false accusations, fabricated evidence, and targeted harassment to remove executives who crossed you. The methods used against Mr. Mercer, digital forgeries, conveniently disabled security systems, match the patterns in these other cases exactly." "You can't prove any of that," Thorne shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "We don't have to," Leo said. "The morality clause doesn't require a criminal conviction. It only requires credible evidence of unethical practices. But I'm a reasonable man, Grayson. I'm going to give you a choice." Leo stood, looking down at the man who had taken such pleasure in his destruction. Option 1. You vacate these premises in 30 days. You can try to move your entire specialized operation elsewhere. I wish you the best of luck. Thorne's face paled. Or, Option 2, you publicly and irrevocably clear my name. You admit, in a press release approved by my lawyers, that the allegations against me were fabricated. You pay me $30 million in damages for defamation, emotional distress, and legal fees, and you sign a new lease for this building at triple the current rate. Leo paused, letting the terms hang in the air. "Oh, and one more thing. You divorce my ex-wife immediately." "You can't force me to divorce her," he spat, but his eyes flickered toward Isabella, who looked as if she'd been slapped. "No," Leo agreed, "but I can make staying married to her financially catastrophic. Every month you remain married to her, the rent for this building doubles. Month 1, $6 million. Month 2, $12 million. Month 3, $24 million. How long do you think your board of directors will let you keep a liability of that magnitude?" Isabella was on her feet. "Leo, baby, please, we can talk about this. I never wanted any of this to happen. It was all Grayson's idea." "Save your breath, Isabella." Leo didn't even grant her a glance. "Grayson, you have 24 hours to decide. After that, I initiate formal eviction proceedings and release every single affidavit and piece of evidence we have to the Wall Street Journal." As Leo turned to leave, Thorne's lead attorney was already whispering frantically in his ear, the man's face ashen. Leo stopped at the door. "By the way, Grayson," he said, "that text Isabella sent me, about me being nobody? Thank her for me. It's been the most motivating message I've ever received." Grayson Thorne chose to fight. He lost, badly. Within 48 hours, the board of Titan Global, having been anonymously provided with the full dossier of evidence, called an emergency meeting. The Philadelphia Inquirer ran a front-page story detailing Thorne's pattern of corporate tyranny. The stock price plummeted. Faced with either a humiliating public firing or a slightly less humiliating resignation, Thorne chose the latter. His empire, built on a foundation of intimidation and fraud, crumbled the moment someone with greater power kicked the supports out from under it. The divorce was filed within a week. Isabella's texts became increasingly desperate. "Leo, please, I made a mistake. We had 20 years together. Doesn't that mean anything? I'm going to be destitute. Is that what you want? Please answer me. I know you see these." She even came to Luigi's one Friday night. Leo still delivered pizzas occasionally, out of loyalty to Luigi Moretti, the man who had given him a hand when the world had turned its back. "Leo!" she called out, standing in the rain as he loaded up his car. She looked haggard, her expensive clothes looking costume-like on her. "Please, just 5 minutes." "Your order will be ready in 15, ma'am," he said, walking past her as if she were a stranger. "I'm sorry. Is that what you want to hear? I'm sorry for everything." He stopped and turned, the rain plastering his hair to his forehead. "No, Isabella. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry the money's gone. You're sorry you backed the wrong horse. That'll be $23.50 for the pizza." She stared at him, her face a contortion of rage and defeat, then threw the money on the wet pavement and fled into the night. He never saw her again. The 19 other employees Thorne had destroyed each received a $2 million settlement from a fund Leo established. Dennis from accounting broke down in tears when the call came. "Leo," he choked out, "you didn't just get justice for yourself, you got it for all of us." Silas Croft became a permanent, cherished part of his life. Evenings were spent going through his father's old papers, his blueprints, his journals. Leo learned that Daniel Prescott wasn't just a dreamer. He was a man of profound principle who believed wealth was a tool for community building. "Your father always said, 'Success without a soul is the greatest failure of all,'" Silas told him one evening as they looked out over the gleaming riverside corridor. "He'd be so proud of you, Lionel. You didn't just reclaim your wealth, you reclaimed his dream." Leo converted a significant portion of the corridor into affordable housing and incubator space for small businesses displaced by corporate greed. The Daniel Prescott Foundation, launched with a $100 million endowment, provided legal aid and financial support to victims of corporate malfeasance. Sophia graduated at the top of her class, debt-free. She now ran the community health clinic Leo built in his grandfather's name in North Philadelphia. "Dad," she said at the ribbon cutting, her voice full of pride, "you taught me that it's not about how hard you fall, it's about how you get up and who you bring with you." Michael left Sterling and Locke to start his own firm, specializing in protecting employees from corporate exploitation. His first case was defending a warehouse worker falsely accused of theft. They won. The worker's son sent Leo a crayon drawing of a superhero, which he framed and placed on his desk, next to the photograph of his father. Standing in his new office, in the very building his father and Silas had started with a dream and a patch of swamp, Leo felt a sense of peace he had never known. The revenge had been sweet, but the redemption was sublime. The man who had been crushed into nothing had been rebuilt, not by the money, but by the purpose it afforded him. The best revenge wasn't the eviction notice or the public humiliation of Grayson Thorne. It wasn't the silence from Isabella. The best revenge was the text he sent her on what would have been her first wedding anniversary, a photo of him handing the keys to a new apartment to a single mother, another victim of Thorne's ruthlessness. The message was simple. This is what being somebody looks like. She never replied, and Daniel Prescott's son didn't need her to. He had learned the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes being brought to your knees is just the universe's way of putting you in a position to pray for the strength to rise. And sometimes the ground that seems to be swallowing you whole is just preparing to elevate you to a height you never dreamed possible. His father had left him more than a fortune. He had left him a compass, and that was worth infinitely more than $800 million could ever be.